A single dad fed a homeless woman. Weeks later her lawyers knocked on his door. The cold autumn wind swept through the streets of Chicago as Daniel Carter locked the doors of the small grocery store where he worked. It had been another long day. His back ached from unloading boxes, and his hands were rough from years of hard labor. Yet the moment he looked at the photograph taped inside his wallet, he smiled. It was a picture of his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. Since his wife, Emma, had passed away 3 years earlier from cancer, Lily had become the center of Daniel's world. Every morning he woke before dawn. Every evening he came home exhausted. Everything he did was for her. Money was always tight. The rent was overdue more often than he liked to admit. The refrigerator was sometimes nearly empty by payday. But somehow, they managed. As Daniel walked home carrying a small bag of discounted groceries, he noticed a woman sitting alone near a bus stop. She looked to be in her late 60s. Her gray hair was tangled. Her coat was torn. A thin blanket covered her shoulders. Most people passed without looking. Others glanced briefly and hurried away. Daniel slowed. The woman looked weak. Her eyes were fixed on a nearby restaurant where people were eating dinner. He knew that look. It was hunger. Real hunger. The kind that hurt. Daniel stopped. "Ma'am," he said gently. The woman looked up. Her eyes were tired but intelligent. "Yes. Have you eaten today?" She hesitated. Then quietly answered, "No." Daniel looked at the grocery bag in his hand. Inside were supplies intended to last the week. Bread, milk, eggs, soup, peanut butter. Nothing fancy. But enough. He thought about Lily. He thought about their budget. Then he sighed. "Wait here." The woman seemed confused. Daniel crossed the street and entered a small diner. A few minutes later he returned carrying a hot meal. Chicken soup, a sandwich, coffee. The woman's eyes widened. "You bought this for me?" Daniel nodded. "Everyone deserves a warm meal." The woman's hands trembled as she accepted it. "You don't look rich." Daniel laughed. "I'm definitely not." "Then why help me?" He shrugged. "Because if my wife were alive, she'd be angry if I didn't." For a moment, the woman stared at him. Then something unexpected happened. Tears filled her eyes. "Thank you." Daniel smiled. "Take care of yourself." He continued home. He never asked her name. Never expected to see her again. To him, it was simply one person helping another. Nothing more. That evening Lily sat at the kitchen table doing homework. "You're late, Dad." Daniel placed the groceries on the counter. "I stopped to help someone." Lily looked up. "What happened?" "There was a homeless woman who looked hungry." "So you bought her food?" Daniel smiled. "How did you know?" "Because that's what Mom would have done." His eyes softened. "Yeah." Lily grinned. "Then you did the right thing." Daniel ruffled her hair. Sometimes he wondered how someone so young could be so wise. The weeks passed. Life continued as usual. Work, bills, school, laundry, stress. Nothing changed. Or so Daniel thought. One rainy Thursday afternoon, he was fixing a broken shelf at home when someone knocked on the door. 3 sharp knocks. Daniel opened it. Standing outside were 2 men and a woman dressed in expensive suits. Behind them was a black luxury car. For a second he thought they had the wrong address. "Can I help you?" The woman smiled politely. "Mr. Daniel Carter." "Yes. My name is Rebecca Mills." She handed him a business card. The words nearly made him laugh. Mills and Richardson Law Group. Lawyers. Why would lawyers be looking for him? There must be some mistake. There isn't. The lawyers exchanged glances. Rebecca spoke carefully. "We represent Mrs. Margaret Whitmore." Daniel frowned. The name meant nothing. "I'm sorry. I don't know her." Rebecca smiled. "We believe you do." She stepped aside. A familiar voice spoke from behind her. "Hello, Daniel." His eyes widened. The homeless woman. The same woman from the bus stop. Only now she looked completely different. Her gray hair was neatly styled. Her elegant coat probably cost more than Daniel earned in a month. Diamond earrings sparkled in the rain. Daniel stared. "What?" The woman smiled. "I told you we'd meet again." Minutes later everyone sat in Daniel's tiny living room. Lily watched from the hallway, fascinated. Daniel still couldn't understand what was happening. Margaret Whitmore folded her hands. "I owe you an explanation." "I'd appreciate one." She nodded. 3 months ago I was one of the wealthiest women in Illinois. Daniel blinked. "What?" Margaret smiled sadly. "My family built Whitmore Industries." Daniel recognized the name immediately. It was $1 billion company. Factories, real estate, investments. Everyone knew it. I don't understand. My husband died 2 years ago. Her expression darkened. After his death, certain family members became interested in one thing. The inheritance. She nodded. They wanted control. Over the following months, Margaret explained everything. Relatives had challenged her authority. Board members questioned her decisions. People she trusted betrayed her. Eventually she became overwhelmed, depressed, lonely, unsure who genuinely cared about her. So she did something extraordinary. She disappeared. No assistants, no bodyguards, no luxury hotels. She wanted to see how people treated someone who appeared to have nothing. The results broke her heart. Most ignored her. Some insulted her. A few stole from her. Others treated her like she was invisible. Then she met Daniel, the man who had almost nothing himself, yet still chose kindness. Margaret looked around the small apartment. You gave me food when you couldn't easily afford it. Daniel shrugged. It wasn't a big deal. It was to me. She paused. And it changed my life. Margaret reached into her purse. Rebecca handed her a folder. Daniel suddenly felt nervous. Margaret slid the folder across the table. I have no children. Daniel stared. Okay. My husband and I always wanted a family. Her voice softened. But it never happened. She looked toward Lily. The little girl waved shyly. Margaret smiled warmly. Then she turned back to Daniel. Over the past several weeks I've had investigators learn more about you. Daniel's eyebrows rose. That sounds slightly terrifying. Everyone laughed. Margaret continued. I learned about your wife. Daniel lowered his eyes. I learned how hard you work. She continued gently. I learned that despite financial struggles, you volunteer at shelters. Daniel looked embarrassed. It isn't much. I learned that your daughter spends weekends helping elderly neighbors. Lily smiled proudly. Margaret nodded. Good people. The room grew quiet. Then Margaret said something that left Daniel speechless. I want to help you. Daniel expected maybe a check. Perhaps a donation. Maybe assistance with school costs. Instead Margaret opened the folder. Inside were legal documents. Mrs. Whitmore. She smiled. Margaret, what is this? I recently established a charitable family trust. Daniel stared at the papers. The trust contains $10 million. His mouth fell open. Lily gasped. The lawyers smiled. Daniel thought he had misheard. 10 million. Margaret nodded. The trust will support you and Lily. Daniel nearly fell off his chair. I can't accept that. You haven't heard everything. There can't be anything after $10 million. Margaret laughed. There is. She leaned forward. The trust requires one condition. Daniel braced himself. What condition? Margaret's eyes glistened. Allow me to be part of your lives. Silence filled the room. Daniel stared. Margaret continued. I'm not asking to replace Lily's mother. Tears formed in her eyes. But I would like to be her grandmother. Lily's eyes widened. Daniel looked at his daughter. Then at Margaret. For the first time he realized this wasn't about money. It was about family. A lonely woman. A grieving father. A child missing a grandmother. 3 broken pieces. Searching for connection. That evening the lawyers left. Margaret stayed for dinner. The meal consisted of simple spaghetti. Nothing fancy. Yet Margaret declared it the best meal she'd had in years. Lily spent hours asking questions. What was it like being rich? What was your favorite toy? Did you ever meet movie stars? Margaret answered every question patiently. The apartment filled with laughter. Something Daniel hadn't heard enough since Emma died. When Margaret finally prepared to leave, Lily hugged her unexpectedly. The older woman froze, then hugged her back. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Good night, Grandma Margaret. Margaret broke down crying. For the first time in years, she looked truly happy. Months passed, then years. The trust transformed Daniel and Lily's future. Debts disappeared. College savings grew. Daniel eventually opened a community center helping struggling families. Margaret funded scholarships, food programs, housing assistance. Together they helped thousands. But money wasn't the greatest gift. Family was. Margaret attended every school event, every birthday, every holiday, every graduation. When Lily won a science competition, Margaret was there cheering louder than anyone. When Daniel finally found happiness and remarried years later, Margaret sat in the front row. And when people asked how they had become family, they always laughed at the unbelievable story. A billionaire disguised as a homeless woman. A struggling father with a kind heart. One simple meal. One act of compassion. One decision that changed everything. Many years later, after Margaret passed away peacefully at the age of 91, Lily stood before hundreds of mourners at her memorial service. By then she was a successful doctor. She looked at the crowd and smiled through tears. People always talk about the millions she donated. She paused. They talk about the schools she built and the charities she funded. The audience listened quietly. But that's not why I'll remember her. Lily looked at a photograph of Margaret. I'll remember her because she taught me something important. She swallowed hard. Kindness is never wasted. Tears filled many eyes. Lily continued. My father gave a hungry stranger a meal. She smiled. He thought it was a small act. But to one lonely woman, it meant everything. She looked toward Daniel sitting in the front row. His eyes were wet. And because of that moment, our family was born. The room fell silent. Then applause slowly filled the hall. A celebration of a life changed by compassion. A reminder that we never truly know who stands before us. Sometimes the person who appears to have nothing may have everything. And sometimes the smallest act of kindness becomes the greatest blessing of all.